You know, one of the most underrated British actresses of all time was Elsa Lancaster. And to get her on Night Gallery, Rod Serling and Jack Laird must have pulled a lot of strings because she hits it out of this park in this episode. The Bride of Frankenstein, who was the Mary Shelley, also played Mary Shelley in that classic movie, plays a character here that's more of an expansion of her old real life personality because Elsa took no shit. It's called Green Fingers. Now, this was season 2, episode 15, which aired on January 5th, 72. The teleplay was by Rod Serling with the story by R.C. Cook, directed by the great John Badham. Now, Cameron Mitchell plays an outstanding evil character. It's basically a land grabber that wants to push Lydia Bowen, Lanchester's character, off land to build a new super project. But things don't go as planned and accidentally drives him insane at the end. Now we have Michael Bell as Ernest, George Keymis as Crowley, Harry Hickox as the sheriff, Bill Quinn as the doctor, Larry Watson as the first deputy, and Jeff Burton as the second deputy. Now, according to David Jewell's WordPress, it begins the strange appropriately of Greensleeves, an off-kilter synthesized version, as we see 77-year-old Linda Bowen, played by Lanchester, yes, the Bride of Frankenstein, 36 years earlier, tending to the lovely garden around her tidy house. The music changes instrumentation when 2 cars arrive, one of which contains wealthy business magnate Michael J. Saunders, played by Mitchell. Saunders is a man who always gets what he wants, but he has met his match in the somewhat eccentric lady of the house. Saunders has planned to build a series of factories in the area and has succeeded in persuading every other landlord in the area to sell their property, except for Mrs. Bowen. Confidently, he tells his subordinate Ernest, Michael Bell, that everyone has their price and he'll soon find hers. But when he goes to speak with Mrs. Bowen, Saunders finds out that she's more stubborn than he imagined and that she apparently does not have a price. Now, there's some indication that this would be considered under modern theory or elder abuse or elder pressure. Lanchester's character does not be pushed around, and that's what freaks out Saunders' character to no end. She simply does not want to sell her home at any price. This is where she has lived her entire life and has spent untold hours toiling with pleasure in her garden, with abundant results to enjoy. She explained to Saunders' disinterest that she has green fingers. Everything I plant grows. So the terminology green fingers is more like a Commonwealth term. It's basically, a backyard artist that can make any type of plant grow in any type of soil with, positive reinforcement or the right fertilizer or the right combination of nitrates. Now, concluding that he can't get her to sell, Saunders hires an unsavory character, a hitman called Crowley, George Keymis, to do whatever it takes to get her off her property. Crowley comes by at night and chops off one of her fingers with an axe as a none too subtle warning. Of course, the person escapes and gets into a car accident. Now, when the police finally arrive in the morning, they immediately find the injured Mrs. Bowen tending to her garden. Crowley died in a car crash that night trying to make his getaway. We don't even know if he was cursed or not. At the hospital, Mrs. Bowen succumbs to loss of blood and a shock to her 77-year-old body system. So it gets kind of weird here because there's a lot of fake blood involved, but we're wondering to himself, why are not mentioning the fingers? The next night, Ernest drives up to the Bowen property and finds Saunders there, engaging in a sort of gloating victory lap. Just him, his ever-present cigar in the beautiful garden, which he now grudgingly admits he admires. Some of the plants Mrs. Bowen grew are the same as he knew growing up in Atlanta. So he's getting a twinge of guilt and a twinge of, not say deja vu, but something is going on here. Now, disgusted by his boss, Ernest kind of fires himself by driving off. Just then, Saunders notices something moving in the dirt. To his shock, it is 2 hands pushing their way upward, then the top of a head emerges. A very effective scene, by the way. He turns to the road and screams for Ernest to wait, to no avail. When Saunders turns back to where their hands are working their way up, there's now just a large hole. And a very interesting scene, he jumps into the hole for about 10-15 seconds, and he almost disappears himself. It's a very effective scene. Now, freaked out, he runs into the house where he finds Mrs. Bones in a rocking chair, covered in dirt, and also covered in kind of weeds that are kind of stuck to her in a kind of a bad makeup job. There are roots and branches jutting from her body, and she's seemingly very much alive. And in Elsa's very great British voice, Mr. Saunders, I have green fingers, she tells him again. Do you know that? Everything I plant grows, even me. His sanity shattered, Saunders staggers outside. With his hair and mustache now white, he addresses the camera directly, which makes absolutely no sense, and a scene that is too over the top and takes us out of the mood of the piece. He basically describes about what happens when things are planted. From little acorns, mighty oaks grow, that's a fact. But you know what grows from an old lady's fingers? Old ladies. Overall, Jewel finds it a very strong segment, with fine direction again from John Badham, who did a great job as well in a very different story with Ross Martin called Camera Oscura. Now, great performances by Lanchester and Mitchell. It would have been better if there was a little bit longer to give more depth to the character, but we don't know if this person has any relatives. We don't know if this person has any friends. So why this is very effective, and you can watch this episode free on YouTube, it's because there's a semblance of truth in this. Most people that run a garden would not sell their land for anybody because it's their home. I know my house in Canterbury, New Brunswick. I don't have a massive garden, but I like the backyard. It's very effective. It feels like, you know, a property. If I want to add a fake lighthouse or a garden, I can do it. I think why Lanchester is so strong in this, because it comes across as a kind of a British play. And there's another version of this was done in Britain several years later, more of a tribute episode. Now I figure, like in my personal opinion, this is a top 20 episode of Night Gallery and probably one of the most modern, because most of Night Gallery didn't use massive special effects except for that big gigantic mole that was in the famous episode where the soap opera actors are being taken away and almost raped. But I mean, this is pretty effective. But when she's in the rocking chair, rocking back and forth, and what works with this episode is the visuals and the audio, because the visuals and audio in any type of play need to compensate from lack of scenery. It's almost like not say a bottle episode, but there's not much scenes outside, and it seems like the whole episode is like filmed in late fall or early winter, very overcast. But Cameron Mitchell does a great performance as well. But you don't recognize him right away as Cameron Mitchell because he has a very heavy beard and a kind of a Jufro. But like I said, very, very effective. What you should do over Halloween, ladies and gentlemen, as it's coming up, watch the 10 best episodes of Night Gallery. I think this is one of them, at least top 15. And you'll see the great effect that Rod Serling's writing was put in with the various directors that Jack Laird hired. Like I said, it is a top 10, top 15 Night Gallery episode and a hidden gem of the 1970s. Thanks for listening. Bye.